Napoleon's first wife, who is best remembered under the name Josephine, was born on June 23, 1763, on the island of Martinique, which belongs to the French Republic. The island is located northwest of Barbados. Her full name was Marie Joseph Rose Tascher de la Pacherie. You might see that the name Josephine, like she is known in history, does not appear in her long name. That's because Josephine is the name Napoleon started calling her after meeting her, perhaps due to her middle name, Joseph. Until she met Napoleon, she went by the name of Rose or Marie Rose. To make it simple, I will continue to call her Josephine in this video. Josephine was the eldest daughter of her parents, a wealthy family that owned a sugarcane plantation. The family got into financial trouble when in 1766 a hurricane destroyed their property. Here enters Josephine's aunt, Edme, who had been a long-time mistress of a wealthy French aristocrat named François, Marquis de Beauharnais. When François' health was deteriorating, Edme saw her chance to help the struggling family and arranged a marriage between François' son, Alexander, and her niece, Catherine. Catherine was Josephine's younger sister, but she unfortunately died before she could leave for France. Josephine's ambitious aunt did not want to give up this alliance and sent Josephine instead. Josephine, together with her father, left for France in October 1779. Josephine and Alexander married on December 13th. Despite having 2 children, their marriage proved to not be a happy one, as Alexander frequently abandoned his small family. Their daughter Hortense would later go on to marry Napoleon's brother Louis. During the Reign of Terror in France, Alexander was arrested on April 18, 1794. Only 3 days later, Josephine was arrested as she was considered to be too close to the counter-revolutionary financial circles. Alexander, accused of having poorly defended Mainz during the siege of Mainz and considered of being an aristocrat suspect, was sentenced to death. Alexander, alongside with one of his cousins, were guillotined on July 23, 1794. On July 27, 1794, Maximilien Robespierre, one of the most influential persons during the French Revolution, was guillotined. With his death, the Reign of Terror in France came to an end, and Josephine, thanks to that, was freed shortly after. Josephine and Napoleon met for the first time in 1795, and she became his mistress. But Napoleon, who had been on the hunt for a bride for years, wanted Josephine as his wife and thus proposed to her in January 1796. Napoleon was 6 years her junior, so Josephine reduced her age by 4 years on the marriage certificate, and Napoleon made himself 18 months older, making the couple to be at around the same age. Napoleon's family received the message of their wedding with great shock and could not understand why Napoleon would want to marry an older widow that already had 2 kids. But Napoleon felt hard for Josephine, who in change did not show him the same affection. The couple had no time for a honeymoon as Napoleon had to return to the army only 2 days after their wedding. During his time in the army, Napoleon kept a picture of Josephine in his pocket and is said to have kissed it on every passing hour. He further frequently wrote letters to his beloved wife, while she rarely responded to them. It did not take long for Josephine to start an affair with a hussar lieutenant named Hippolyte Charles. The news about Josephine's affair reached Napoleon shortly after, and he was infuriated. From then on, his love for Josephine changed. During his tour to Egypt, Napoleon started an affair of his own with the wife of a junior officer named Pauline Force. Over the next few years, Josephine and Napoleon's relationship grew cold and he started having several affairs. On December 2, 1804, Napoleon crowned himself Emperor of the French in a lavish ceremony. After placing the crown on his head, he placed it on Josephine's head, making her Empress of the French. It soon became clear that Josephine, then in her mid-40s, would not bear any more children, and Napoleon seemed to accept that fact, as he made his nephew Napoleon Charles Bonaparte his heir. Napoleon Charles Bonaparte was the son of Napoleon's brother, Louis, and Josephine's daughter, Hortense. making him a nephew and step-grandson to Napoleon. In 1807, Napoleon's heir died suddenly and he was left with no heir. He spent the next 2 years creating lists of eligible princesses for him to wed. In late 1809, Napoleon informed Josephine about his plans to divorce her in order to remarry and produce an heir. Josephine agreed on the divorce and it took place on January 10, 1810. After the divorce, Napoleon created her Duchess of Navarre and they kept a friendly relationship. On May 29, 1814, Josephine was on a walk with Tsar Alexander I of Russia. She begged the Tsar to let her join Napoleon in exile. Only a few hours later, Josephine died at the age of 50. Napoleon learned from Josephine's death while in exile on Elba and he was devastated. Through her children, Josephine is the direct ancestor of the heads of the royal houses of Belgium, Denmark, Luxembourg, Norway, and Sweden. The young lady Napoleon replaced Josephine with was Archduchess Marie Louise of Austria. Marie Louise was born on December 12, 1791 in Vienna as the eldest surviving daughter of the then Archduke Francis of Austria and his wife Maria Theresia of Naples and Sicily. Marie Louise was a granddaughter of Queen Maria Carolina of Naples, the favorite sister of Marie Antoinette. A year after her birth, her father became Holy Roman Emperor as Francis II. Marie Louise's childhood was marked by the conflict between France and Austria, and she grew to despise France. Her grandmother, Maria Carolina, encouraged her feelings towards the French, as she herself despised the French Revolution, which caused the death of her sister Marie Antoinette. During the War of the Third Coalition, Marie Louise and her family were forced to flee Vienna, and the war took a heavy toll on her family's empire. The imperial family took refuge in Hungary and Galicia, which is a region that is located in today Poland and Ukraine, before returning back to Vienna in 1806. During this time, her father relinquished the title of Holy Roman Emperor and made himself Emperor of Austria. The War of the Fifth Coalition broke out in 1809 and Austria was once again defeated, forcing the imperial family to flee. When returning back to Vienna shortly after, her father met with Napoleon at their residence Schönbrunn Palace to sign the Treaty of Schönbrunn, ending the War of the Fifth Coalition. At around the same time, Napoleon decided that he needed an heir to secure his relatively new empire. He also sought the validation of his empire by marrying a member of one of the leading royal families of Europe. Napoleon set his eyes on Tsar Alexander I's younger sister, Grand Duchess Anna Pavlovna. This caused alarm in Austria as they were afraid of being sandwiched between two great powers, and Emperor Francis began thinking of marrying off his daughter Marie Louise to Napoleon. The Russians kept delaying the marriage negotiations, and so Napoleon took back his proposal in January 1810 and began negotiations to marry Marie Louise. Only a month later, a marriage contract was signed before even informing the future bride. When Marie Louise was informed by the marriage, she responded, "I wish only what my duty commands me to wish." Another month later, on March 11, 1810, Marie Louise was married to Napoleon by proxy. Napoleon was represented by her uncle Archduke Charles. Upon her marriage, she became Empress of the French and Queen of Italy. Marie Louise met Napoleon for the first time on March 27, 1810, and allegedly told him, "You are much better looking than your portrait." Despite growing up despising everything French, Marie Louise settled quickly in the French court. Napoleon initially remarked that he had married a womb to an aide. But they quickly grew fond of each other, and Napoleon did everything to please his young wife. At one point, he allegedly even remarked that he preferred Marie Louise over his first wife, Josephine. Unlike Josephine, Marie Louise is said to have been completely faithful to her husband, which increased their relationship even more. By July 1810, Marie Louise became pregnant and gave birth to a son on March 20, 1811. Their son, named Napoleon François Joseph Charles Bonaparte, was Napoleon's long-awaited heir. He was overjoyed and gave him the title King of Rome upon his birth. He was also delighted that his wife had survived the birth and said, "I'd rather never have any more children than see her suffer so much again." In June 1812, Napoleon started his invasion of Russia and failed terribly, destroying almost half of his army. As a consequence, Prussia, the UK, and Russia allied and declared war on Napoleon's weakened army in 1813. Away in the War of the Sixth Coalition, Marie Louise was appointed Napoleon's regent. Marie Louise unsuccessfully tried to get her father to ally with France, but the opposite happened. On January 25, 1815, Napoleon saw his wife and son for the last time, before returning back to war. With news of the Allies approaching, Marie Louise, firstly certain to remain in Paris, was persuaded to leave the city together with her son on March 29, 1815. They settled at Blois, where news reached her that Napoleon was dethroned and her son was deprived of the crown. With the signing of the Treaty of Fontainebleau, it was decided that Napoleon should live in exile on Elba. Marie Louise was allowed to keep her rank and was made ruler of the duchies of Parma, Piacenza, and Guastalla, with her son as heir. That same month, Emperor Francis advised his daughter and grandson to return back to Vienna, which they did. In summer 1814, Emperor Francis arranged for Count Adam Albert von Neipperg to accompany Marie Louise on a trip. There the two fell in love and became lovers. When Napoleon escaped from Elba in March 1815, Marie Louise sent a letter to his secretary asking for his understanding and forgiveness. Napoleon was shortly after defeated for the last time and was exiled to St. Helena. He never tried to contact Marie Louise again. Marie Louise moved to Parma, of which she was now officially the Duchess, together with Count von Neipperg. There she and her lover had 4 children. After Napoleon's death in 1821, she married Neipperg, but after 8 years of marriage, Neipperg died of heart problems. Her first son from Napoleon grew up at the court in Vienna. The relationship grew increasingly cold as Napoleon grew older. After protestings in Parma, Marie Louise, overwhelmed by the situation, left the city in February 1831. She then settled at Piacenza, where she in 1833 married Charles René de Bombelle. On December 9, 1847, Marie Louise fell ill and her health deteriorated over the next few days. On December 17, she passed out after vomiting heavily and never woke up again, dying in the evening. Marie Louise is buried at the Imperial Crypt in Vienna.